What's up, hooligans? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about Percy Jackson episode 3. And if you haven't already, I made a review on episode 1 and 2, so make sure to go check that out. And as per usual, I will be covering spoilers for this episode, but nothing past episode 3. Alright, so let's get right into it. So last episode ended with Chiron giving Percy a quest to retrieve Zeus's lightning bolt that they believe is now stolen in Hades' realm, and they must go to Los Angeles to go to the entrance of the underworld. So at the top of this episode, Percy seeks the Oracle to seek some answers. I also thought it was really funny that Percy called the Oracle a Halloween decoration because she was not moving at all. And just with these snarky little remarks and sarcasm, I'm really growing fond of Walker as Percy, even though he might not look exactly like what I pictured, but his personality is definitely there for Percy. So then the Oracle actually transforms into Gabe, Percy's stepfather, and begins telling him this prophecy essentially. I'm not really sure why they chose to go with Gabe. I don't think that was in the books, but I could be wrong. It just felt like a interesting random choice to make Gabe the one to tell the prophecy. But essentially the Oracle tells Percy that one of his friends is going to betray him. Ooh. And so Percy's kind of really affected by this because he already kind of has trust issues over everyone, and this is something that is in the back of his mind for the entire episode. But see, the thing about oracles is that their prophecies are usually true, but it's very ambiguous, so you could interpret it in many ways. So back outside, Chiron tells Percy that he needs to choose 2 others to accompany him on this quest. And you know he's not going to choose Clarice because Clarice is clearly going to try to kill him on the quest. And he could choose Luke because Luke is the strongest fighter, but he decides to choose Annabeth because, of course, who else would he choose? And it doesn't hurt that Annabeth is a great strategist and the daughter of Athena. So his second choice is Grover. Obviously, it's going to be these 3 going on the quest. And we see Grover actually in this Pegasus field and feeding the Pegasuses? I thought they looked great. They look like real animals. And when Percy tells Grover that he chose him to accompany him on the quest, and Grover's kind of shocked because he's like, I'm not the best fighter or anything. But because of their established friendship, Percy wants Grover to accompany him. And we find out later in the episode, Grover was actually Thalia's and Annabeth's protector, but he kind of failed. So he's kind of dealing with that insecurity as well. So before Percy leaves, Luke comes and gives him a couple of gifts. So he gives him these golden drachmas, which are this kind of Greek currency, but it will definitely come into play later. And of course, the most iconic thing is the flying shoes. And I absolutely loved the way they designed these shoes. How the wings spread from the laces and each feather is made out of the shoelace. Absolutely brilliant choice. I think it is better than what I imagined in my head. And then we see outside Annabeth is looking solemnly at this tree, which we learn is actually Thalia, the daughter of Zeus. And in order to save her life, Zeus turned her into a tree. And then Percy says that she met a pine cone's fate. I was like, damn, Percy.
Damn.
But then we kind of already see these 3 starting to get into a squabble over who's the group leader and trying to find their dynamic and become a team. So then they take a taxi into the city and get to the Amtrak station, and we learn that they can't fly because the sky is Zeus's domain, and if Zeus kind of catches wind of Percy, then he might just strike him down for being the son of Poseidon. So they get onto the bus, and then the group kind of starts arguing again because Annabeth won't let Percy leave the bus since she knows that monsters will be able to smell him since he's a really powerful demigod. And so Grover is like, I don't want to be a part of any of this, and then he starts to sing this song to try to distract them. But ultimately Annabeth kind of wins this argument, and while she is outside of the bus, she realizes that the Furies have found their location and are preparing to attack them on the bus. So we see Mrs. Dodds, and then we see another Fury on the bus, and they transform, but because of the mist, normal humans can't see them. So I thought that was a really well done scene where Mrs. Dodds is just walking through the crowd crowd, and no one pays her any mind. So this part is a little different from the books because Annabeth is the one who kind of kills the Furies, but I believe in the books Percy was the one to kill the 2 Furies. So then the group runs off into the woods, and then they smell hamburger, so they're like, we're hungry, let's go get food. So they find this place called Auntie M's, and outside of the shop is a bunch of monster statues. And unfortunately, Mrs. Dodds actually catches up to them and is prepared to fight. But then this woman comes out, who we presume is Auntie M, and then we see that Mrs. Dodds is really uncomfortable by this woman and is refusing to look at her in her eyes. And then of course it is revealed that this woman is actually Medusa, who has the ability to turn anyone into stone just by looking at them. So I believe in the books it took them a while to realize that it was Medusa, but this was pretty much instantaneously. There's no trying to hide the fact that this is Medusa, and I think that was a smart choice because why keep up the suspense when everyone knows it's Medusa? I also just loved the way they portrayed Medusa in this series. She's just very elegant, and her dress almost looks like it's stone. There's carvings in it, and to the average eye she just kind of looks like this pretty lady, but of course we know there's something way more sinister underneath. So then the gang eats the food that she provides, which surprisingly she did not poison, and everything seems like it's okay, but then she starts explaining her history of how she actually is Medusa and how Athena, Annabeth's mother, actually was the one to curse Medusa because of a bunch of petty things. And what she says is actually pretty interesting because the children are not the same as their parents unless they choose to do the same actions. But at the same time, they shouldn't have to inherit the responsibilities and debts they have to pay. But of course, Annabeth is very, very sus of Medusa and is like, hey, I don't think we should trust her any longer and we need to get ready to leave. And so Medusa is trying to manipulate Percy into leaving Grover and Annabeth so that he can go save his mother, while Medusa can exact revenge on Annabeth for Athena's wrongdoings. But while she's yapping away, Percy had already run away. And so then the gang kind of runs into her basement, I guess, which is huge because they can't run outside since Mrs. Dodds is still waiting there. And then the basement is super dark, only lit by some flames. And then we see a bunch of humans that Medusa has turned into stone. And then it turns out one of them was actually Grover's family member. So I'm sure that was really traumatizing for him to see. And then we also get to see a shot of Medusa with her hat off and her snake hair. And I think the creators of the show are really, really smart because they're trying to hide a lot of CGI, either showing only half shots of the body or hiding a lot of things in the dark because it allows them to get away with things without it looking super jank. And then of course at the end, the gang managed to kill Medusa. In the book, it's done a little differently. I believe Percy was holding some kind of reflective material, but in here I thought they did it better because it was using each 3 of their abilities in conjunction to defeat Medusa. So first Grover distracted Medusa with the flying shoes, and then Annabeth put the invisibility cap on her head so that they couldn't see Medusa's eyes, and then Percy uses Riptide and beheads Medusa. And this is a smart way to do it, of course, because this is still Disney, so they don't really want to show beheading on a kid's show. And so then Percy takes Medusa's head, brings it outside to where Mrs. Dodds is, and then Mrs. Dodds looks into Medusa's eyes. Even though she is beheaded, her powers still work. And so then Mrs. Dodds is turned into stone. Mrs. Dodds just cannot catch a break. She just keeps dying episode after episode. So then Percy kind of has a heart-to-heart with the group and says that the Oracle told me that one of you is going to betray me. But then Annabeth was like, Mrs. Dodds offered me to give you up, but I didn't. I actually killed her instead. And then Percy explains that Medusa was also trying to convince Percy to leave the group, but then Percy ended up killing Medusa. So then this kind of establishes them as we are true friends, we are sticking together no matter what, and from now on they kind of can trust each other a little bit more. So then Percy is like, okay, but what do we do with this head, because we can't just leave it anywhere? So then he finds the mailing equipment for Hermes Express, I guess. And then we see Hermes take up this package and bring it all the way up to Mount Olympus, which is at the very, very top. I believe it was floor 600 of the Empire State Building. And Hermes is played by none other than Lin-Manuel Miranda. This man just has all of the Disney gigs, I swear. But I don't want to hear any Lin slander because I love this man. I love Hamilton. It was definitely kind of a jump scare to see him. But you know what? I'm excited to see him as Hermes. I think it'll be really funny. Maybe we'll even get a couple of scenes of him rapping. Eliza! So overall, this episode was good. I had some problems with it, including I wanted a little more action. I think killing Medusa was really anticlimactic. And I think this is a problem that I'm noticing so far in the show, is that they have an issue building up tension and building up stakes during a fight. Like the interactions with the Furies, they just instantly died. The interaction with Medusa, she basically instantly died. So I'm hoping that in future scenes, especially more important fights later on, that it's a little more action-packed and they manage to hold tension. And I think part of the issue is that the pacing feels really fast, but now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, it makes sense that it's going this fast because we only have 8 episodes, and technically the Medusa part is still in the very, very beginnings of this book. So I'm not complaining too much about the pacing just yet, but it is starting to inch towards it being too fast and a little rushed. Also, my biggest problem with this episode was that there was just so much exposition and not enough just showing us. You know what the great difference between a visual medium like TV versus a book is? Well, it's the visuals. So I would have really liked it if they showed us what happened to Thalia, showed us the backstory of what happened to Medusa, instead of just having these characters give a monologue about what happened. I just think it's a little lazy. Like maybe even just do a little animated segment to show the backstories of what they're trying to explain. I think even that could be a good solution than just telling us with words. But anyway, next week it seems like they're going to be dealing with the Chimera. So I'm kind of liking this style so far, where it almost feels like each episode is a monster of the week, but it's still leading towards the bigger plot overall. There were definitely some book differences that I noticed this episode, but they definitely weren't huge changes, and the changes that were made were pretty much for the better. But what did you guys think of this episode? What are your thoughts on Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes? Do you think the pacing is too fast? Regardless, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my review next week. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.